Hello there once again. Welcome to the Constitution Study. My name is Paul Engel, and we are here to read and study the Constitution so we can not only teach the rising generation to be free, but so we can return the Constitution to its rightful owners, that is, we, the people of the United States of America. I am glad you could join me today. If you are new to the Constitution Study, welcome. We are reading and studying. That's what we do. We look at the Constitution, we look at what it says, and we try to figure out how to apply it to our lives today. If you want to find out more, head over to the website, constitutionstudy.com. You can find other episodes, you can find the articles I've written, and you can keep track of what we're doing here at the Constitution Study. We're working on some very interesting things I hope to be able to announce in the near future, so stay tuned. If you're returning, if this is not your first time, you've been here before, thank you. I'm hopefully you're finding this useful and educational, and that is why you came back, and that's what I'm looking for here. We are in trouble. The nation as a whole is spiraling into a mess, and believe it or not, we the people are the solution. And it's going to take some time and some effort, and it's going to take that effort from people like you who are willing to learn what the truth is and then use it to change lives. So I'm glad you could be here. I'm going to ask you to head over to the website too, constitutionstudy.com. If you haven't already signed up for the mailing list, do so. You will get a free copy. I'm not sure which essay is going out now, but you'll get a free copy of my current essay and read more about what is going on within the Constitution Study. I pretty much just tell you what new stuff is coming up and what programs, what projects we're working on. Everyone, by the way, you can head over and ask a question. I love when you ask questions. It is questions that not only feed me ideas for new episodes, new podcasts, new articles, it helps me return the favor. It closes that loop. I can sit here and I can talk to you about things, but if I'm not answering your questions, well, then I'm not doing everything I can. And if I don't know what your questions are, I can't really answer them. So head over to the website, constitutionstudy.com, ask a question, make a comment, sign up for the mailing list, check out the other ways you can follow me, Facebook, YouTube, Patreon, and consider if there's something you do to help. Again, whether it's just an idea or something else, I'm looking forward to it, please. I'm actually trying to engage with other groups, trying to engage with like homeschool groups and other groups that are interested in reading and studying the Constitution. It meant a lot to me when I was back in New York and led that Constitution study. I learned a lot as I prepared. I learned a lot through the interactions, and I'm hoping others will want to learn a lot as well. So today I'm kind of revisiting a topic, but in a bit more depth. I've talked before about rights, what they are, what they mean. And I was having a conversation. I was actually answering someone's question when I realized I needed to go into a bit more depth. I needed more grounding on what is a right. And it really changes the way you look at things when you truly understand what a right is. Now, most of us, I'm sure, remember from the Declaration of Independence, it says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." That is nothing new. It's part of our lifeblood. You learn it almost by osmosis in America. But what I find today is there's a lot of talk about rights, but it seems really very little understanding of what a right is. And by little, I mean minuscule, next to nothing, which is sad because understanding rights and how to use them is really critical to being a free nation. So what is a right? Well, the Webster's 1828 dictionary says a right is, quote, just claim, immunity, or privilege. For example, all men have the right to secure enjoyment of life, personal safety, liberty, and property. So a right, it's a just claim, it's an immunity, or it's a privilege. Okay, but what does that mean? Well, let's start by breaking down the different types of rights. There actually are different types of rights, and see if we can make some sense out of this. Now, first you have to understand a right can be alienable or unalienable. Remember, the Declaration says there are certain unalienable rights. Well, if their rights are unalienable, obviously there are some that can be alienable. In other words, there are some rights that can be taken away and others which cannot. There are rights that you have to do to get something, and there are other rights that they just exist. They're part of you. Well, for example, in America, we have a right to vote. That right has been given to you by your government, and it requires that you register with the government to do so. You can't just show up in a polling place and say, hey, I'm here to vote. Well, actually, you can, but that's because that's a whole other discussion. Legally, properly, you need to register with the government in order to be able to vote. Now, you also have a right to drive a car. But again, that right was given to you by the government. And it requires you to pass the required tests to obtain a license, which can be revoked for just about any reason the government decides. The government issues a license, the government can take away the license. These are alienable rights. They're an example of a privilege, something that you have been given and something that whatever entity gave it to you can take it away. The government gives it to you, the government can take it away. Now, an unalienable right are those you have just for existing. They're sometimes called human rights, and they include things like the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to pursuit of happiness. These rights cannot legitimately be taken away. However, they can be forfeited, for example, as punishment when convicted of a crime via due process. See, when someone violates a person's right, it is called infringement. We use that word a lot. I go back to the Webster's 1828 dictionary. Infringe means to break as contracts, to violate either positively by contravention or negatively by non-fulfillment or neglect of performance. So when the government violates one of your rights, like the right to free speech, either by legal means or by neglecting their duty to protect it, they are infringing on your rights. Okay? Now, rights can also be positive and negative. And, you really don't hear this much at all, but think about it for a second. A positive right requires action from others, while negative rights require their inaction. To use the language of the Webster's 1828 dictionary, a positive right is a just claim, while a negative right is a just immunity. For example, the right to free speech is actually a negative right. Sounds a little backwards, but think about it. It's an immunity from government action to impact your speech, while your right to counsel is a positive right. It's a claim that the government must provide you with legal representation. Now, with that all defined, what is a right? You see, there's one more extremely important aspect to rights which we need to understand, and that is the legitimate exercise of our rights. See, if our rights are truly rights, then they must be applied to everyone equally. If my rights are more important than your rights, then what you have isn't really a right, and certainly not an unalienable one. So the only legitimate exercise of someone's rights cannot, and in fact must not, infringe on the rights of others. Let's look at a couple of examples. Let's start with a negative right. So you have a right to free speech. My right to free speech means my speech cannot legitimately be controlled by others, especially by government. However, I cannot legitimately use that right to infringe on someone else's right. So while I absolutely can yell fire in a crowded theater, contrary to popular belief, the Supreme Court said so, if there is no fire, I can be held accountable by the people whose rights I have infringed, like the right to peaceably assemble to watch a movie, or the owner's right to operate their business without interference. But of greater importance, it seems, in today's society is the illegitimate exercise of positive rights. If you listen to the news, if you follow politics at all, the vast majority of the rights that are being talked about are positive rights, and they are, in fact, not rights at all. They cannot be rights. It is impossible for them to be rights because they cannot be exercised without infringing on the rights of someone else. Take the quote-unquote right to not be offended. The only way to not be offended is to force the speech and actions of others, to infringe on their rights of speech, press, assembly, and free exercise. Yet more and more today, Actual force, the exertion of power against one's will, is used against American people, both by their government and by the society, to infringe on their rights because they don't want to be offended. People are fined and jailed for not expressing a currently favored point of view, like that on homosexual marriage, or because they express a belief in God or that the right to life in the womb should be protected. See, these so-called rights are used to force one group's will upon another, violating their rights. The other positive rights abused today include the rights to stuff, to things. The rights to health care, education, a living wage, housing, and transfer payments cannot be legitimate rights since they can only be had by infringing on the property rights of others. You have an unalienable right to yourself and to the output of your labor. This means you cannot legitimately be told how to live your life or what to do with what you earn or create as long as you don't infringe on the legitimate rights of others. Listen to politicians and social rhetoric today. What do you hear? Almost all of it are groups arguing about what they want to force other people to do. They want to force people to approve of your lifestyle or to force people to live a certain way, force people to pay for the consequences of their decision, or force people to ignore them, force people to speak, act, dress one way or another, force people to pay others for not working, having babies, or getting hooked on drugs and alcohol. Any way you slice it, rights today, at least rights talk today, is all about infringing on other people's rights. The whole idea of a truly unalienable right is almost gone in America. Think of it this way. See, if you can force your rights on others by infringing on their rights, what prevents someone else from infringing on your rights to enforce their own rights? You may be in a favored group today. You may be able to force others to do your will. But the winds of change almost always blow the other way from time to time. That means if you don't protect the rights of others today, you have no expectation of them protecting your rights tomorrow. For a people to be truly free, and I mean actually truly free, they must have their rights protected, all of their rights protected, not only from government, but from each other. I was growing up, there was a saying, I may vehemently disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. The idea that I would endanger my own life to protect your right used to be an American dream. It was an American ideal. The very concept of freedom and liberty come from the recognition of the rights of others. My right to free speech and your right to free speech. And we can argue and disagree all we want as long as we allow each other the opportunity to do so. I shudder when I think, how do we call ourselves the land of the free if we will not defend those rights? How do you call yourself the land of the free if you will not defend each and every person's rights, especially the rights of those you disagree with? Now, sure, we are freer than most nations in this world. But you take a look at where we're going. You take a look at what's been going on the last few years, even the last few weeks, and what do you see? You project that onto the future. I do not see more freedom. I see more tyranny. I do not see more liberty. I see more oppression. I see people having their views squelched. I see people having their speech infringed. I see people having their property damaged, destroyed. And I see people getting meaner and meaner and meaner to protect what they want and infringing and imposing their wills on others. And you know what? If you think about it, the imposition of someone's will on you, you call tyranny. How do you think they feel when you impose your will on them? The root of all of this is a complete breakdown of the fundamental idea of rights and our willingness to defend the rights of others. And it's so important. It is the bedrock of liberty. It is the bedrock of our nation, was the idea that there were just some rights we would never infringe on. And nowadays, we don't learn it. We're not taught it in school. We're not taught it in home. We're not taught it in society. what we're taught is how to infringe on other people's rights. And it's sad. And the only thing that keeps me from just curling up in a ball is knowing that there are Americans out there who are waking up, who are learning that rights are important. Either they have learned it or they're learning it and they're waking up, and maybe groups will get together. They will learn what the Constitution says. They will learn what rights truly are, and they will begin restoring this nation to the land of the free, where you can be different and that's allowed, where I will be truly tolerant of different points of views because they will tolerate me. And if we don't, then this experiment in self-government is dead. I have no other way of putting it, because all that's left is whose tyranny is going to rule. And you'll be happy when it's yours, and you'll be terrified when it's somebody else. So I hope this made you think. I hope this got your attention, woke you up and said, wait a second, I never thought of a right that way. And then look at yourself and how you treat others, saying, am I protecting their rights? I can't expect them to protect my rights if I won't protect theirs. It is important bedrock. It is worth studying. You can find out more. Head over to constitutionstudy.com. I am looking for opportunities to speak to others, to engage with others. And I hope you will share this information with others because it is so important to this nation. I hope you will share it with others. I hope you'll give me feedback and questions so I can work on this further. And most of all, I really, really look forward to seeing you the next time on the Constitution Study.